Bonjour, welcome. Today we will hear from Dr. Supriya Sharma, Chief Medical Advisor for Health Canada, as well as Dr. Marc Berthiaume, Director of the Bureau of Medical Science of Health Canada. Aujourd'hui, nous entendrons des allocutions de Dr. Supriya Sharma et de Dr. Marc Berthiaume de Santé Canada. Nous prendrons ensuite vos questions jusqu'à
We'll be taking your questions until 12:45.
On vaccine approval until 12:45. At 1 p.m., we will be back with, on stage, Dr. Howard New, Major General Danny Fortin, as well as Dr. Sharma and Berthiaume. And they will be accompanied by spokespeople or experts from different federal departments. À 1 heure, nous serons de retour sur le podium avec les Dr. Howard New, Major Général Danny Fortin, Dr. Supriya Sharma and Marc Berthiaume, as well as aussi des experts de différentes agences et ministères fédéraux. Donc, over to you, Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, Eric, and good afternoon, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm here to talk to you about Health Canada's authorization of the first COVID-19 vaccine in Canada, manufactured by Pfizer and BioNTech. This is a critical milestone in our fight against COVID-19 and in our efforts to provide every Canadian with access to a vaccine. Canadians can have confidence in our rigorous review process and that the vaccine was authorized only after a thorough assessment of the evidence demonstrated that it met Health Canada's strict standards for safety, efficacy, and quality. I'd like to describe what this Health Canada authorization means and, importantly, what information we've made publicly available to summarize the science and evidence that formed the basis of this decision. Health Canada approved this vaccine through an interim order pathway that allowed us to accelerate the overall review process while still applying our rigorous standards for safety, efficacy, and quality and making our decision based only on science and evidence. We accepted and assessed information from Pfizer-BioNTech as it became available during the product development process. This rolling review shortens the time it takes to authorize a new vaccine. The review involved a dedicated team of our most experienced reviewers with expertise in a wide variety of scientific domains, including clinical medicine, biochemistry, immunology, and other disciplines relevant to the development, testing, manufacturing, and quality control of vaccines. We concluded that there was strong evidence supporting that the benefits of the vaccine outweighed the risks, and the manufacturer can scale up production while providing consistent assurance of quality. Once the vaccine is in use, Health Canada and the Public Health Agency of Canada will closely monitor for any adverse events, both in Canada and abroad, and will take action if any safety concerns arise. As part of its authorization, Pfizer-BioNTech is required to continuously monitor the use of the vaccine and report any side effects or new safety concerns to Health Canada. We know that even the best vaccines, ensuring that people have as much information as possible to help them make informed decisions for themselves and for those they care for. In our continuing efforts to be as open and transparent as possible, we are publishing the technical information for each COVID vaccine and treatment, as well as all other information on vaccines to the government's main COVID-19 website. Our staff has been working around the clock to make this content available and easily accessible. The content includes the Canadian Product Monograph, which is a scientific document that describes the content of the vaccine information for patients, how it should be used, how safe and effective it was in clinical trials, and any warnings and precautions for its safe use, as well as the regulatory decision summary, which provides information on the submission and an explanation of Health Canada's decision. We put all of that information in one site, covid-vaccine.canada.ca. So that's covid-vaccine.canada.ca. We are also publishing additional information on vaccines, our authorization process, the different types of vaccines we are reviewing, and basic details about the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. In the coming weeks, we will publish a more comprehensive scientific summary of the data supporting the authorization, and then the detailed clinical trial data we assessed when making our decision. Now that a vaccine is authorized, of course, people want to know when they will receive it. The federal government is working closely with provinces, territories, and public health partners to align plans for the timely rollout and will share information with Canadians as new developments unfold. It's important to note that initial supply of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine will be limited, with more vaccine becoming available in spring 2021. Health Canada is also reviewing another 3 vaccines, and the government has signed 7 advanced purchase agreements to secure supply. Today's authorization marks a critical milestone in our efforts to bring COVID-19 under control, and the availability of vaccines will increase throughout the year, providing every Canadian with the opportunity to be immunized. Thank you.
Bonjour.
Good day. Thank you for being with us today. I'm here to announce that Health Canada has authorized the first vaccine against COVID-19 in Canada, created by Pfizer and BioNTech. This is a significant step in our fight against COVID-19 and in the efforts we are making for all Canadians to have access to a vaccine. Canadians can have confidence in our rigorous assessment process and be assured and that it ensures safety, efficacy, quality to our standards at Health Canada. I'd like to explain what this authorization means and also what information we published to summarize under an interim order which allowed us to accelerate the process while maintaining rigorous efficacy, quality, and safety norms, standards. We are based strictly on science in making this decision. Science Canada assessed the information provided by Pfizer and BioNTech in the process of their work. This continuous process meant that there was less time required in order to go through all the steps in the process. The technical experts in a variety of scientific fields, such as science, bioimmunology, and other disciplines involved in the testing and quality control of vaccines were involved. We found that there is solid evidence to show that the benefits outweigh the risks and that the manufacturer can increase production while maintaining the quality of the product. Once the vaccine is administered, Health Canada and the Public Health Agency of Canada will ensure close monitoring of any adverse effects in Canada and abroad. If there are any concerns about safety, measures will be taken. Based on authorization conditions, Pfizer-BioNTech have to constantly oversee the use of the vaccine and always note any potential side effect to Health Canada. We know that the best vaccines are only effective if people trust them and are prepared to be vaccinated. To maintain confidence, it is important to be both open and transparent. Communicate as much information as possible so people can make informed decisions for themselves and for their loved ones. In a constant concern for openness and transparency, on our COVID-19 website, we have specific information on every vaccine and every treatment for COVID-19 and other information about vaccines. Our staff is working tirelessly to make this information easily accessible. You will find the Canadian monograph of the product, a scientific document that explains the composition of the vaccine, information for patients, the use, the safety, its efficacy during clinical trials. You will also find a summary of regulatory decisions that provides information on the presentation and an explanation of the decision made by Health Canada. There is additional information on vaccines, authorization processes, and the types of vaccines we're looking into, as well as basic information on the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. All of this information can be found at the website covid-vaccine.canada.ca. Over the coming weeks, you will see full, in-depth summaries of all of the information that led to they will be able to access this vaccine. The federal government is working closely with the provinces and territories as well as partners in the public health area to harmonize distribution promptly and will keep Canadians informed of the evolution of the situation. It is important to note that the initial quantities of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine will be limited. Further doses will be available in the spring 2021. Health Canada is currently examining 3 other vaccines. The government has 7 purchase agreements, anticipated purchase agreements to ensure supply. This announcement today is a crucial step in our attempt to curtail COVID-19. This will give every Canadian an opportunity to get vaccinated. Thank you.
the line, 2 questions from the media. Please, just a reminder that today we'll take questions on the Pfizer vaccine approval until 12:45. So please keep your questions on the vaccine rollout for the portion at 1 p.m. Nous prendrons vos questions jusqu'à 12:45 sur l'approbation ou l'autorisation.
We'll be taking your question until 12:45 then on this Pfizer vaccine. So we'd ask that you to focus on the distribution issues after 1 p.m.
Those asking questions in the room, please make your way to the freestanding mic. Operator, over to you.
Thank you. Merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. There will be a brief pause while the participants register for questions. Thank you for your patience. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. Il y aura un court délai vous permettant de vous enregistrer dans la file d'attente pour la période de questions. Merci de patienter. Our first question, la première question, Lina Dib, la presse canadienne. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Question. Yes, hello, Mr. Berthiaume. You are saying that Pfizer has to monitor what happens with its product and advise Health Canada of any problem. I'd like to know whether Health Canada, independently from Pfizer, is also monitoring. For instance, there were 2 people in the UK who had an allergic reaction. Are you independently looking at what's happening with the vaccine, or are you waiting for the information from the company? Answer. Thank you for your question. Health Canada examines, alongside with public health, other types of effects of the vaccines. There are a number of mechanisms to take into account when there are side effects. Aside from that, in Canada, there is a system whereby healthcare professionals, when they note undesirable side effects upon use of the vaccine, Health Canada. So there are a number of systems in place to make sure the vaccines are safe once they are marketed and available. As to what you're referring to, the allergic reactions that were reported in the UK, Health Canada is also cooperating closely with other regulatory agencies. We already have approached the UK regulatory agency to gain additional information as to those cases that were reported there. So there are multiple systems in place to closely monitor the safety of the vaccine. The approval was done very rigorously, but we are also very closely following the evolution of the drug on the market in cooperation with multiple partners. Thank you for your question. Follow-up? Question. Yes. Can you tell us where you are as to Moderna, which I would imagine will be the next vaccine on the list? There are 3, I think you mentioned. Is Moderna the next one? Answer. Thank you for your question. There are 3 other vaccine candidates that are currently being reviewed. We can say that Moderna is the most advanced among the other 3 candidates based on the information we received and what we are currently overseeing currently. We don't have a specific date to identify for the approval of the Moderna vaccine, but we're working closely to review the data we actually currently have, and we expect an approval shortly, but we can't identify a date at this point as to the Moderna vaccine. Thank you, Doctor. Operator, next question.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm curious if you could explain this authorization. I know in the United States and I think in Europe, they refer to it as sort of an emergency use authorization, but the Prime Minister said earlier this week that it's not use if there are caveats on this approval that are different than in other types of approvals that Health Canada would give.
Right. Thank you very much. I think when people think about the term emergency use authorization, they often equate that with something that's less than a full review. And so the distinguishing piece in terms of the Health Canada review is that it is a full review in the sense that we looked at the same type of data that we would normally when we look at any vaccine for authorization. It was authorized under what we call the interim order pathway, which gives us some flexibilities about the way that we do the review, including the ability to do what we call, as we said, the rolling review. So to accept information as it becomes available, compared to waiting till all of that information is available before starting the review. In addition, it gives us some flexibility around putting terms and conditions on licenses and other information as well that's required. So the distinction is that it is through an interim order pathway. Those interim order pathways are similar to emergency use authorization in that they were put in place in response to the public health emergency, but we want to make sure that we reassure Canadians that that review is basically the same review as we would with any vaccine. It has looked at all of the information. And then just in terms of other authorizations, I think some people have been asking about the comparison of the Canadian authorization with potentially like the UK authorization. So in the UK, they authorize one specific lot for a temporary authorization, whereas ours is broader. So it allows for the authorization of multiple lots, multiple authorization, the information on instructions for use, full information in the product monograph in terms of labeling, and additional information as well. So it really was akin to a full authorization.
Thank you, Doctor. Follow-up?
Yeah, I'm also interested in this. You're talking about it, you have to get data from the company if there's adverse reactions. If you're sort of monitoring it yourself, you're getting information about what happened in the UK with those allergic reactions. How do you convince Canadians when they hear stuff like that, well, you're still checking to see if it's safe, so why should I get it? What do you say to Canadians who would be afraid to take this vaccine when they hear that we're still monitoring it to see if it's safe?
Thanks. So to Canadians, what I would say is first and foremost, the authorization follows a really rigorous review of all the scientific and technical data from the clinical trials and all the manufacturing and all the preclinical data, all the research that has gone into the vaccine so far. When we do an authorization, it means that we've looked at it and the benefits outweigh the potential risks. But it is still a drug, it's still a vaccine, and there are potential risks even if they're rare. So that's why it's important that we continue to monitor it. So I would say to Canadians, you know, we've authorized it. If it is their turn to get the vaccine, they absolutely should feel comfortable getting that. But we still do need to continue to monitor it as we would any product, because obviously when we do the research are done in clinical trials. They're done in smaller groups of people under ideal conditions, and we need to get information from the vaccine as it goes out and starts to get used in higher numbers of people, not only in Canada, but...
Answer. So the question was, given the fact that we're still overseeing potential side effects of the vaccine, how to explain to Canadians or convince them or encourage them to be vaccinated. The side effects of the vaccine can occur. I mean, a vaccine is a drug. There's always this calculus of risk-benefit analysis. The Pfizer vaccine was examined rigorously, which does not mean there are no side effects. We are actively working on monitoring these side effects. What we can say is we have excellent data on a large number of people, which characterizes the risk profile and the risk-benefit profile rigorously. The assessment was done rigorously. We can reassure Canadians that getting the vaccine is a benefit to them. Also, another thing to remember is that when we get vaccinated, it's positive for ourselves, but it's also good for our loved ones in our community. So it goes beyond individual protection. As Dr. Sharma said, it's an assessment that was done. Even though it was done more quickly than usual, it was done as rigorously as it would have been done for any other vaccine approved by Health Canada in the past. Thank you, Doctor.
Questions? We'll start with Toronto Star.
Hi, Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. Dr. Sharma, could you speak about, though you concluded that the benefits outweigh the risks, can you talk about some of the side effects that people might expect, some of the things that you would consider within a normal range, and some of the things that actually maybe you want to watch more carefully? This report out of Britain about them looking at allergic reactions, for example, can you talk a little bit more about what's acceptable side effects, what would give you some concern?
Thanks for the question. Maybe I'll start with the UK reports because I know there's a lot of interest in them. So I think it's really important to say that, you know, as we monitor the vaccines, adverse event reports will come up. So what do we know? We have to look at what we know right now, what we know from the assessment that we've done, and then what we do going forward. So with respect to the UK cases, we do know about them. We've been working really closely with our UK counterparts to get additional information about them. We know that those were allergic reactions that happened quite close to after somebody got the vaccine, and that the individuals were treated appropriately and have recovered. In terms of the clinical trials with respect to allergic reactions, out of the close to 44,000 people in the clinical trials, there were 2 cases of allergic reactions that were more on the severe side. One was in the group that got the vaccine, one was in the group that did not get the vaccine. So it wasn't a significant finding in the trials. However, we know that with all vaccines, there's a risk of allergic reactions. And that's why when people receive vaccines, we ask that they remain in the area that they get the vaccine for a period of time, usually 15 to 20 minutes, to be monitored. And that's because we are introducing something foreign to the body, and it is possible to get an allergic reaction, however rare. So in terms of when something does come up with respect to vaccines, we take a look at it. We assess to see whether or not it is even related to the vaccine, and we're still in that phase now. And then we see if there's anything else that we need to change about how the vaccine should be administered, how it should be used, the information that we would put out. So we're still in the phase of looking at the 2 cases, working with our international counterparts, and if there's any change in the way that the vaccine should be used, we will make that publicly available, share that with everyone before the first person gets vaccinated in Canada. So that's with respect to the allergic reactions. With respect to reactions in general, the ones that were found for the Pfizer vaccine have been in line with what we see in other vaccines. So the most common reaction that was seen was a little bit of discomfort at the injection site itself. The most common was a bit of fatigue. And then the next after that was a bit of headache. In most of those cases, they were around the same types of symptoms from the first vaccine to the second vaccine, with the exception of fatigue. People felt a bit more fatigued with the second. So all of the reactions that we had seen were relatively mild, they were short-lived, and then they resolved. We are always on the lookout for more serious adverse events as well. In total, when we look at the overall population in the clinical trials, the rate of serious adverse events was quite low. So it was 2.8% of the population for people over the age of 55, and 4.6% of all serious adverse events for people under the age of 55. So relatively low. We are always looking for any additional side effects, and that's why we continue to monitor. As Dr. Berthiaume has talked about in his response in French, we have both requirements on the company to continue to monitor, and they have requirements to continue to monitor the patients in the clinical trials for 2 years. And then we also have a system for monitoring in Canada with public health officials and Health Canada to monitor all of the doses and the outcomes as well. So there's a very strict system in place, and in fact, these cases being identified is a sign that the system is actually working. They were identified, they're being investigated, they've been shared with everyone, and we're looking into whether or not there are any impacts for Canada.
Donc, les effets secondaires.
So the side effects that have been noted with the Pfizer vaccine following clinical testing on 44,000 individuals, so close to 22,000 people vaccinated. This is to be anticipated, so injection site pain, headaches, fatigue, muscular aches, joint aches, fever. These secondary or side effects are relatively infrequent overall, but we can those side effects can be expected following any other vaccine injection. Now, more specifically, as to there are other aspects such as slightly swollen lymph nodes, and that also is to be expected from a vaccine. From the 44,000 subjects that were vaccinated in the clinical trials, only 2 serious allergic responses were noted, one in the non-vaccinated group and the other one by in the vaccinated group. So it is a foreign body that's being injected for a therapeutic purpose, and there's always a potential for for a reaction, as is the case for any injection. The number of cases is very, very low. That being said, we continue to follow this vaccine closely, and there is international cooperation on this. All of that information is open, has been circulated. There are 2 cases that have been reported in the UK, And that information was immediately shared by the UK. They issued warnings. What we know from these cases is they appeared among patients who had had reactions in the past, not necessarily to vaccines, but to other products where we're talking food or other drugs. The UK has issued recommendations to see whether, or to recommend not giving vaccines to people who do tend to have strong allergic reactions of any sort. In Canada, we're receiving the information to that effect. We will be issuing advisories as to those kinds of reactions shortly.
Quickly, so if I thought that the other jurisdiction, or maybe if I don't know if I've got that wrong, if you could clarify, and what terms and conditions then do you feel are the biggest safeguard for Canadians that you've put on Pfizer?
Yes, so the authorization is for people over the age of 16. I think most jurisdictions are looking at the same data, so they're looking at that age range. In the clinical trials, there were some participants that were younger than that. Those numbers were older. And the second part of your question was on the terms and conditions. So one of the provisions in the interim order is that it allows us to put terms and conditions on the license itself. And broadly, the terms and conditions sort of fall into three categories. One is the requirement for the company to submit additional and ongoing information. So it's the 6-month follow-up post the last injection for the people that were in the trials, and then ongoing data up to 2 years. There's also requirements around additional information on labeling and additional information around the quality and the manufacturing piece. But all of those terms and conditions are available on the website as well, and so people can take a look and see what those are in detail, and as those terms and conditions are fulfilled, we'll continue to update that list as well.
Thank you. Next question in the room, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. Dr. Sharma, you spoke to us a bit with Tonda, but can you just clarify, is Health Canada is or isn't advising against people with adverse allergic reactions take the shot right now? Or like, is that gonna, like, I understand you said it's still under review, but it's unclear if you're actually advising against it right now or where that stands.
So right now, based on the information that we've seen in the clinical trials, the product monograph does say that if you've had an allergic reaction to the vaccine or a component of the vaccine already, then you should not take it. Now, so that's for people who had already had been exposed and had an allergic reaction to, as we said, either as Dr. Berthiaume had said, the people that had the allergic reactions in the UK had other history of other severe allergic reactions. They both carried adrenaline, epinephrine shots with them. At this point in time, we're not changing our recommendation, but what we're doing is that we're looking at that information, and should we need to broaden it to be extended to people with other severe allergic reactions, such as foods or other medications, then we'll make those recommendations, and we'll do it before the first person gets the vaccine.
Okay, so right now you're only advising that only people who are allergic to a specific ingredient in the vaccine should not be taking it right now.
That's right.
And my follow-up question for you is, there's been a lot of questions around whether Health Canada would be weeks behind the FDA, let alone a day ahead. So can you just explain to us how you beat the FDA today?
Sure, we're just better. So, I mean, I think we're not in a race with any other regulator. We're not trying to beat any other regulator. What we're trying to do is beat this vaccine, and we're working against this, trying to beat this virus and working against this virus. So our review is, as we said, I think a lot of regulators, we're all looking around the same information. We may get things submitted to us at different times. So what the commitment was that we've made is that we are reviewing it in an expeditious way. We've expedited the review. We have not compromised in terms of the safety, efficacy, and quality. And then as soon as that review is done, we've done the authorization and we've communicated with everyone. And it just so happened we got the last piece of information late last night. People worked at it. They were up early this morning to put information, get it ready for the website. And so that's why we're announcing today. We're certainly watching what is happening in the United States. We have members of Health Canada and the Public Health Agency that will be listening in on their committee deliberations that will be happening tomorrow. And if there are any changes to our authorization, we'll do that. But just to say that the information that's been put out so far with respect to the FDA for that committee and the questions is all information that we've looked at. So there's no new data or no information that they're looking at that we haven't included in our review.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. We'll turn over to the phone and we'll do one question on the phone, one question in the room for the remainder of the time of this portion of the press conference. Donc, nous allons nous tourner au téléphone pour une question au téléphone, une question dans la salle jusqu'à 12h45. Donc, prochaine question au téléphone. Operator, over to you.
Thank you. Our next question, la prochaine question, Ziaoli Lee, City News. Your line is open. À vous la parole.
Hi, thanks. I want to ask a question about the British allergic reactions, which seems to be what everyone is interested in. I understand British regulators also included some conditions that the vaccine only be administered in environments where resuscitation may be possible if required. Going forward, in general, if another regulator puts these sorts of conditions in place, is Health Canada going to look at enacting those locally as well?
So if basically we've done the authorization. The authorization has been based obviously on the evidence and the science that we have at this point in time and that analysis. That is something that we, and all the vaccines are something that we continue to monitor, and we will continue to monitor them not only here in Canada, but we'll look at all the information that's available with respect to the vaccines. So for this vaccine and other vaccines as they get authorized. So we're looking at the information from the UK. We have to make our own analysis on that data. So the circumstances of those cases, whether or not they're applicable to Canada, sometimes there are issues with specific lots. We know that we get different lots that might be sent to other countries. We need to look at that as well. But we take that information and we do the analysis, and then we decide whether or not there needs to be a change or a shift in anything for Canadians. But absolutely, we've been working incredibly closely with our international regulatory counterparts all through this.
In the room now, CBC.
Oh, hi, Dr. Sharma, Tom Perry, CBC. Can you talk a little bit about, I know you're talking about side effects and allergies and that kind of thing, but I guess the process for finding out how long this virus, how long the vaccine will be effective, does it keep you from passing on the virus to somebody else? What kind of work is going to go into determining that?
Clinical trials to date. And that's included, at least continue to follow that. So we know that the vaccine seems to be quite effective at a level of about 95% in the data that we've seen so far. The question will be then, when we continue to follow those patients, is that immunity is long lasting? And how long does that last? Whether or not people need to be revaccinated at any point in time. I have to say, so far from the data, it does look like that immunity is continuing. And certainly from some of the earlier animal data and the preclinical trials, it looks like it is conferring longer range immunity. But that's something that's an ongoing question. And with respect to the overall monitoring of the vaccine, it's exactly that. It's continuous. We need to keep taking a look at the data. Once, we've outside of the controlled situations and it's starting to be used in larger numbers of people, things that are quite rare might come up as well. So it's all part of the process, and it's something that we do for all vaccines. We learn as we go. Certainly there's more attention placed on these vaccines with everything that we're dealing with COVID-19. But I think that everyone needs to remember that these are vaccines. When we look at our thresholds for authorization, we have to take a look at the benefits and risks. And these are vaccines that are used in otherwise healthy people. These are not chemotherapy drugs that are used in cancer. And so there's a wide range of adverse events that we would accept. These are things that are used in healthy people. So our tolerance for safety issues is very, very low.
Donc, actuellement, les...
So based on clinical data, the vaccine is effective for at least 2 months after the second dose has been injected. The theoretical models and animal models seem to suggest that the effectiveness long-term is promising with respect to this Pfizer vaccine. Additional research will be done by the manufacturer. We will continue to follow the cohort for at least 6 months of those people that were vaccinated, and then we'll have that information. Further studies will also be done. We will certainly be following up the information on safety with respect to that information for the next 2 years. The protection that is granted by the vaccine has to do with symptom protection. Can you be infected with COVID and have it be less serious? And can that illness still be can you still be contagious? Based on the information we have, not only is it effective to protect against infection, but it would also seem to protect people from getting sick and from being contagious. All of that will have to be confirmed, however, by longer-term clinical trials. That being said, I think the main objective of the vaccine is to prevent part of the cases that we've observed that are currently overwhelming our healthcare system and our hospitals. The results are therefore are very encouraging, and we feel that it's a very favorable risk-benefit analysis.
You were talking about transparency and monitoring and that, but is there anything more that you can do to address the concerns of people who may be, even despite all this transparency, hesitant about taking this vaccine?
So first of all, I'd just like to say that I can understand where people are coming from. I think we're all dealing with a lot of uncertainties. So this is a new virus. We are having a new way of living. We've got a vaccine that's been developed very quickly, thanks to incredible advances in science and technology and an unprecedented level of global cooperation. We've got a regulator that's, we've put a lot of additional resources on it, and we have looked at the review in a really efficient way. And so, there's a lot of information that's out there, and there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that's out there. So the first thing that I would say is, we can understand that people are confused at times. It's important that they seek out information from trusted sources. That's why we're putting out a lot of information, not only on this vaccine and a commitment for other vaccines, but we put up general information about vaccination, about mRNA vaccines. We'll put out information about other types of vaccines. So make sure that people educate themselves and use those trusted sources. So that's the first part of it. And that, I think we can just keep being more open and transparent. We've always said that, and I said it in my opening remarks, that even the best vaccine is only effective if people trust it and agree to take it. And that starts with getting information. So where do people get information? They do get information from us. We've done, there's lots of studies that show that they get information from their healthcare professionals. So we're giving information to healthcare professionals so they can have those conversations with their patients. They get that information from their peers. So we're putting out information as well on that. And when we head into a larger vaccination program, there will be a broader campaign to continue to share that information, respond to questions. It's part of the reason we're here today and on television and doing those interviews. So, it really is providing, honest, open information, really being clear about what we know, what we don't know yet. And as soon as something comes up, to communicate that clearly, I think that will go a long way. And I think there will always be people that, there might be people that are the early adopters, people that are, are really dead set against getting vaccines. There's also this group of people in the middle, we call them movable middle, that I think will respond to having that additional information. So absolutely can understand where people are coming from, but hopefully, as you can see from when we're speaking about the work that we're doing at Health Canada and the reviews and the authorizations, you can tell that we have the utmost faith and trust in that process and that commitment to being open and transparent.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We have 5 more minutes, so we'll turn over to the phone. Opérateur, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, Anne-Caroline Desplanques, Journal de Montréal. Your line is open. À vous la parole.
Question. Thank you for taking my question. I'd like to get back to this issue of the interim order pathway that you were referring to. Can you explain clearly and in detail what the difference is between an accelerated or expedited process and a normal process? Thank you for your question. Thank you for your question. Usually, we assess a vaccine in a normal process, a regular process. We ask the manufacturer to submit all of the information, including all the information relating to the manufacturing of the vaccine and all the data analyzed on already done clinical trials before the manufacturer can submit authorization request to Health Canada. What this emergency, or rather interim order, allows for is it allows for greater flexibility. So ongoing evaluation. In the case of Pfizer, in October, early October, when we received the submission, we were able to look at the first phases, the clinical testing on animals, the phase 1, the data. From the very start of the data on the production and manufacturing of the vaccine, we were able to look at this data from the very start, and then the results appeared on these clinical trials. We were able to complete the evaluation. So instead of having all of the information ready and then that all being submitted to Canada, to Health Canada, we received this information on an ongoing basis as it was generated. On top of that, we had a dedicated team specifically earmarked to address this issue of the COVID-19 pandemic. So those measures meant that today we were able to approve the vaccine in an expedited way by maintaining, however, the same requirements in terms of safety, efficacy, and quality, which we would have done for any other vaccine. So we've adapted the process to get a quicker reaction, but there was no downside in terms of rigor. Follow-up question? Yes. In the same vein, before the pandemic began, the issue of vaccines, people being resistant to them, that was already an issue at Health Canada. What do you think you need to do at Health Canada to get people to get on board with the vaccinations? Answer. Thank you for your question. The strategy really is one of transparency and openness. We can understand that people have hesitations, people have questions about health products. Our approach is to be really transparent with all of the data, with the efficacy, recognize that people can have hesitations and be reluctant in terms of vaccines. The approach we've been taking is that the information itself is the antidote to those fears about the vaccine. By maintaining this openness, we are open in general. But as to the COVID-19 vaccine, you will be able to find things on the website. You'll see that Health Canada is accelerating the disclosure of all of this information. There's technical and less technical information available on the website, more accessible to the public there, to help Canadians understand what the benefits are, how it was created, the various stages in the regulatory process, etc.
Take one more question in the room, but we will be back at 1 p.m. for more questions for part 2 on the vaccine rollout. Prochaine question, Radio-Canada.
Oui, bonjour, Laurence Mar.
Yes, question. The vaccine has been approved for Canadians over the age of 16, which means that children are excluded from this. Do you expect to also approve Pfizer for children, and when do you expect that to happen? Answer. Thank you for your question. As you mentioned, the vaccine has been approved for people 16 years of age and older. Already in clinical trials, there have been some participants who were between 12 and 15, but not a large enough number of that cohort to be conclusive in terms of efficacy. Usually, we start by testing among adult populations, but in some cases, there can be complementary studies after the fact to document the efficacy of these new treatments among other populations. So that's what's going to be done for Pfizer, the Pfizer vaccine. There will be complementary studies that will look at the efficacy in younger population groups. We should not forget that there are 3 other vaccines that are currently being studied, and those vaccines could also have data to prove their efficacy in other populations. So all of these things are happening at the time being, and at this point the recommendation is 16 years and older. If we can already break that chain of transmission by having many adults vaccinated in the population, in general population, that will protect children as well. Follow-up question? It's been more than 10 months since the first confirmed case of coronavirus. Now, 10 months, people have been living with bad news. Now, today, finally, we have this first vaccine that's approved. How do you feel? Answer. I think this is an incredible point in time. No one knew at first whether we would even manage to find a vaccine. I think the vaccine was developed thanks to exceptional cooperation from a regulatory standpoint and a scientific standpoint. Many efforts were made to organize these tests, these clinical tests quickly. There are all those participants who volunteered. There's also the fruit of all of those technological enhancements that have been made over the years. All of this is coming to fruition at the same time. Many factors have come together, and today we can announce this. We're fortunate in the way that the external structure of the virus is stable. There are other viruses that are less stable. So I think we can say that this is an excellent day for Canada, that we can announce a vaccine that is available and will be distributed.
Go ahead.
Sure. So the question is, the question to Dr. Berthiaume in French was, how does he feel? To be truthful, it's one of those things where, I mean, we get to stand here and sit here and talk to you about it, but there's an entire team that's just been working round the clock to go through all of these, and we've all been working around the clock. And so right now, it's you don't necessarily have the time to kind of think about celebrating, because there's just so much work to do, and there's so much more work on the way. But to echo what Dr. Berthiaume was saying, is that this is a momentous occasion. I mean, the geek in me is amazed that no one would have thought, I think, even when we looked back at the first discovery of the virus, that less than a year later, we'd be authorizing and then distributing a vaccine. So I think it's just a testament to the decades of science and technology and research that's gone into the development of that vaccine. I think it's a testament to the work of regulators internationally working together. It's a testament to our team that's really dedicated an incredible amount of time and energy and resources to do that. And I think, it's an exceptional day for Canada, and it is one step. It's one step along the road. It's one tool in terms of our fight against COVID-19, along with all of the other measures. We have other vaccines that will be likely coming as well. But I think in a year where we haven't had a lot of good news, this is a bit of good news, and I think we should take a moment to acknowledge that. And then we're all going to get back to work.
Thank you, doctors. That'll be all for today's portion number 1 of the press conference. We'll be back at 1 p.m. sharp. C'est ce qui met fin à la première partie de notre conférence de presse pour aujourd'hui. Nous serons de retour à 13h. Merci.